What people call normal is not a law of nature. It is not written into the fabric of the universe. It is a fragile human invention, created by stories, habits, technologies, and power structures that happen to work for a certain period of time. We wake up every morning assuming that tomorrow will resemble yesterday, not because this is true, but because the human brain is built to seek stability. Normality is a psychological comfort, not a permanent reality. For most of history, humans believed their way of life was timeless. Ancient farmers assumed the rhythm of seasons would define existence forever. Medieval peasants could not imagine a world without kings, priests, and rigid social hierarchies. Even a few decades ago, people believed stable careers, clear national identities, and private inner lives were permanent features of being human. Each of these assumptions collapsed when the underlying systems changed. Normality survives only as long as the forces supporting it remain intact. Today, those forces are shifting at a speed never seen before. Technology is no longer just a tool in human hands. It has become an environment in which human life unfolds. When the environment changes, behavior, values, and meaning change with it. The most important transformation is not visible in streets or buildings, but in the invisible flow of information. For thousands of years, information moved slowly and unevenly. Human institutions were designed for that pace. Laws, religions, and cultures assumed that knowledge would remain scarce, localized, and controlled by human authorities. That assumption is now obsolete. Data now moves instantly, globally, and automatically. Decisions once made by humans after reflection are increasingly delegated to systems that operate in milliseconds. This shift quietly erodes the foundations of what people consider normal. Work, education, relationships, and even self-understanding are being reshaped by systems that most individuals neither see nor understand. People often ask when this change will happen, imagining a dramatic moment of collapse. The truth is more unsettling. The disappearance of normality is already underway, but it is happening asymmetrically. Some lives are being transformed completely, while others still appear unchanged. This creates the illusion of continuity, even as the ground beneath society is dissolving. The danger lies in confusing familiarity with permanence. Just because a routine feels stable does not mean it is secure. History shows that when complex systems reach a certain threshold of change, they do not adapt smoothly. They reorganize suddenly. What once felt unthinkable becomes unavoidable. At the same time, human psychology remains largely the same as it was tens of thousands of years ago. Our emotions evolved to handle small groups, slow change, and direct threats. We are not naturally equipped to understand abstract systems that operate on a global scale and evolve faster than intuition. This gap between technological speed and psychological capacity is becoming one of the defining features of our time. As change accelerates, individuals struggle to keep a coherent sense of reality. The pace of transformation overwhelms traditional frameworks of meaning. When people cannot understand the forces shaping their lives, they cling more tightly to simplified narratives. This is why myths, conspiracy theories, and emotional ideologies flourish during periods of rapid change. They offer certainty in a world that no longer makes sense. The loss of normality is therefore not just economic or political, it is existential. People do not only lose jobs or privacy, they lose orientation. They lose the mental maps that once helped them navigate reality. When these maps fail, anxiety rises, trust erodes, and societies become vulnerable to manipulation. The second great shift follows directly from the first. The speed of change has crossed a point where human adaptation can no longer rely on tradition, instinct, or slow learning. In earlier eras, parents could teach children how the world worked because the world did not change dramatically within a single generation. Today, that promise is broken. Children are being born into a world that even experts cannot fully predict. Skills learned in youth may become irrelevant before adulthood. Beliefs inherited from previous generations may actively mislead rather than guide. This creates a profound educational crisis, not of information, but of relevance. Human adaptation once depended on repetition and experience. You learned by doing the same thing many times in a stable environment. But when environments change continuously, repetition loses its value. By the time mastery is achieved, the context has already shifted. This forces a new kind of pressure on the human mind. People are expected to constantly reinvent themselves, to remain flexible without becoming fragmented, to stay informed without becoming overwhelmed. Few psychological systems are prepared for such demands. The result is not enlightenment, but exhaustion. When adaptation becomes a permanent requirement, attention becomes scarce. Focus dissolves. Individuals drift from one stimulus to another, mistaking activity for understanding. In such a state, deep thinking becomes difficult, and long-term planning feels almost impossible. This creates an opening for external systems to take control. When people are tired and confused, they welcome guidance, even if it comes at the cost of autonomy. Automated recommendations, predictive models, and personalized feeds step in to reduce cognitive load. What feels like assistance is also a quiet transfer of agency. The faster the world changes, the more power shifts away from human judgment toward automated processes. These systems are optimized for efficiency, not wisdom. They do not ask what should matter, they only calculate what works according to predefined goals. When such systems shape everyday life, they redefine normality without debate. Adaptation under these conditions becomes selective. Those with access to education, resources, and conceptual understanding may learn to navigate constant change. Others will fall behind, not because they lack intelligence, but because adaptation now requires abstract skills that are unevenly distributed. This deepens inequality in a new form. The divide is no longer only between rich and poor, but between those who can understand the systems shaping reality and those who cannot. The latter may continue to function, but without meaningful control over their lives. When adaptation fails, societies or not simply stop, they polarize. Some push forward at accelerating speed, while others retreat into nostalgia and fear. Both responses are symptoms of the same underlying problem. A world changing faster than the human mind can comfortably handle. What disappears in such moments is not only the old normal, but the assumption that normality itself will return. Stability becomes episodic rather than continuous. Certainty becomes temporary rather than foundational. In this landscape, the greatest challenge is not technological, but cognitive. The question is no longer how fast machines can evolve, but whether human consciousness can remain coherent under constant transformation. Without that coherence, knowledge fragments, meaning dissolves, and normality becomes a memory rather than a condition of life. The disappearance of normal is not a future event waiting to arrive. It is a process unfolding now, quietly, unevenly, and relentlessly. Those who expect clarity at the end of this transformation will be disappointed. Change no longer moves toward resolution, it moves toward acceleration. Understanding this is not a cause for despair, but for awareness. Only by recognizing how fragile normality has always been can individuals begin to relate to change without illusion. Only by accepting the limits of human adaptation can societies design systems that support rather than overwhelm the human mind. For most of human history, power belonged to those who could understand reality better than others. Hunters who read animal tracks survived. Farmers who read seasons prospered. Kings who read people ruled. Intelligence was never just about thinking faster, it was about sensing patterns before they became obvious. Today, that ancient balance is breaking. For the first time, intelligence is no longer exclusively human. Algorithms are learning at a speed that biology cannot match. They do not grow through childhood, make youthful mistakes, or require decades of experience. They improve through feedback loops measured in milliseconds. Every click, every pause, every hesitation becomes training data. While humans learn slowly from limited personal experience, machines learn rapidly from the collective behavior of billions. This creates a new asymmetry of knowledge. When a system can predict what you will buy, whom you will love, what will make you angry, and when you are most vulnerable, it does not merely understand you. It gains power over you. Prediction is not neutral. Prediction enables manipulation. If someone knows what you will choose tomorrow, they can shape the choices available to you today. People often imagine this as a future problem, something dramatic that will arrive with humanoid robots or visible artificial consciousness. In reality, it is already here, operating quietly through recommendation engines, personalized feeds, and invisible ranking systems. These systems do not need to be conscious to be effective. They only need to be accurate. The more accurately an algorithm models your inner world, the less space remains for surprise. Spontaneity, once a defining human trait, becomes statistical noise. When billions of individual decisions are reduced to predictable patterns, society begins to function like a machine that optimizes itself without asking whether the direction makes sense. This raises a deeper question. If a system understands you better than you understand yourself, who should be trusted to make decisions? Throughout history, humans answered this question by appealing to religion, tradition, or personal intuition. In the coming years, many will defer to data-driven systems because they appear more rational, more objective, and more efficient. When an algorithm consistently makes better predictions than you, ignoring it feels irresponsible. Gradually, authority shifts, not through violence or revolution, but through convenience. People will choose guidance over freedom, accuracy over autonomy. The loss will not feel dramatic, it will feel sensible. At the same time, the economic consequences of this transformation are accelerating. Work has long been the central organizing principle of modern life. It provided income, structure, identity, and dignity. We built education systems, political ideologies, and moral values around the assumption that most people would be economically useful for most of their lives. That assumption is now collapsing. Automation does not eliminate jobs evenly. It removes entire categories at once. When machines outperform humans in pattern recognition, logistics, translation, diagnosis, and creative imitation, large segments of the population are not merely underpaid, they become unnecessary. Unlike past technological revolutions, this one does not simply create new roles at the same pace it destroys old ones. A society can survive inequality. History proves that. What it struggles to survive is irrelevance. When millions discover that their labor, opinions, and even attention no longer matter, social contracts begin to fracture. People lose not just income but purpose. Education as it exists today is poorly equipped for this reality. Teaching children to memorize information or master narrow skills prepares them for a world that no longer exists. By the time a student graduates, the skill they trained for may already be obsolete. Continuous reinvention becomes mandatory yet psychologically exhausting. Most humans are not built to repeatedly redefine themselves. Evolution optimized us for stability, not permanent uncertainty. When identity becomes fluid and temporary, anxiety becomes chronic. This is not a personal weakness. It is a biological mismatch between ancient minds and accelerating systems. In such conditions, political extremism and simplified narratives thrive. When reality becomes too complex to understand, people cling to stories that offer clarity, even if they are false. The danger is not ignorance, but desperation for meaning. Some believe that a universal basic income or similar policies will solve the problem. Financial support may prevent starvation, but it does not answer the deeper question: what gives life value when human contribution is no longer required? A population that is fed but feels useless is not stable. It is volatile. The traditional promise of modernity was simple: work hard, learn skills, and you will have a place in the world. That promise is breaking, not gradually but structurally. When algorithms outperform humans across cognitive domains, effort alone is no longer enough. The most profound risk is not mass unemployment, but mass disengagement. A society where large numbers of people feel redundant becomes vulnerable to manipulation. When you have nothing to lose, you become easy to mobilize and easy to control. This is why the coming years will not be defined by technological breakthroughs alone, but by psychological ones. The central challenge is not building smarter machines, but preserving human dignity in a world that no longer needs human labor in the way it once did. If intelligence is outsourced and usefulness disappears, humanity must redefine its value beyond productivity. Otherwise, people will surrender agency willingly, not because they are forced to, but because they no longer see a reason to hold on to it. The danger is subtle. It arrives wrapped in efficiency, personalization, and comfort. And by the time its consequences are fully visible, the old definitions of work, identity, and relevance will already be gone. For most of human history, relevance was something people rarely questioned. If you were born into a community, your labor, your beliefs, and your presence automatically mattered. The world needed your hands, your memory, and your obedience. Today, that silent contract is breaking. The danger we face is not dramatic rebellion by machines, but a slow and almost polite process through which large numbers of humans become economically and politically irrelevant without fully realizing it. Relevance in the modern world is no longer defined by effort or morality. It is defined by usefulness to systems that process information. If a system can predict your behavior, optimize it, or replace it, then your importance shrinks. This is not a moral judgment, it is a technical one. Algorithms do not ask whether someone deserves a job or a voice. They ask whether a task can be done more efficiently with data and computation. For centuries, power belonged to those who controlled land, then to those who controlled machines, and now to those who control data. Data is valuable not because it reveals the past, but because it predicts the future. Whoever predicts behavior can influence it. Whoever influences behavior holds power. Most people still imagine freedom as protection from physical force, while the real struggle is shifting toward protection from invisible influence. As data systems improve, they do not need to force obedience. They simply design environments in which certain choices become easier than others. Humans rarely rebel against convenience. When an algorithm chooses what you read, whom you meet, and what you desire, resistance feels unnecessary. You still feel free, even as your range of possible decisions narrows. This creates a new kind of inequality, deeper than any before. In previous eras, the poor were exploited, but still necessary. Today, many risk becoming unnecessary, not unemployed for a season, but permanently disconnected from meaningful participation in the economy and decision-making processes. When large groups are no longer needed, their political power fades, and their voices become background noise. Education alone is no longer a guaranteed solution. Teaching people to code or analyze data helps for a time, but systems evolve faster than curricula. The real challenge is not acquiring a specific skill, but remaining adaptable in a world where the definition of value changes constantly. Psychological resilience and the ability to unlearn may matter more than technical mastery. At the same time, humans are outsourcing more decisions to systems they barely understand. Navigation apps tell us where to go. Recommendation engines tell us what to watch. Digital feeds tell us what to care about. Each small delegation feels harmless. Together, they reshape how meaning itself is constructed. When meaning is shaped externally, identity weakens. People begin to define themselves through metrics, likes, views, rankings, performance scores. These numbers appear objective, but they encode hidden values chosen by system designers. What cannot be measured slowly stops mattering. Wisdom, doubt, silence, and moral struggle are difficult to quantify, so they are pushed aside. As identity becomes data-driven, freedom faces a paradox. The more a system knows you, the better it can serve you. The better it serves you, the more you rely on it. The more you rely on it, the harder it becomes to imagine life without it. Dependency replaces coercion. This shift happens without conspiracy and without a central villain. It is the natural outcome of efficiency-driven logic applied to human life. Systems that optimize for engagement, productivity, or security will inevitably shape behavior, because shaping behavior is the fastest path to optimization. In such a world, ignorance becomes dangerous in a new way. In the past, ignorance limited opportunity. In the future, it limits autonomy. Those who do not understand how data flows and decisions are made will still live under these systems, but without the ability to question or influence them. They will accept outcomes as natural even when they are designed. Freedom, then, is no longer just the absence of chains. It is the ability to understand the forces acting upon you and to resist being reduced to a predictable pattern. Without that awareness, people may live comfortably while losing the capacity for independent judgment. The future is not a battle between humans and machines. It is a negotiation between different ways of organizing intelligence. One is slow, emotional, and narrative-driven. The other is fast, statistical, and optimization-focused. If the second dominates completely, human values risk being treated as noise rather than guidance. The greatest threat is not that machines will become human-like, but that humans will adapt themselves to think like machines in order to remain useful. When efficiency becomes the highest virtue, compassion and doubt appear inefficient. When speed dominates, reflection looks like weakness. Societies that fail to protect mental independence may remain technologically advanced while becoming intellectually fragile. They will have enormous power but little wisdom about how to use it. Stability, built on prediction, can easily slide into stagnation. Yet none of this is inevitable. Systems are designed by humans, and design reflects choices. The problem is that most people are excluded from making those choices, even though they live with the consequences. The gap between those who shape systems and those who are shaped by them is widening. To remain relevant in such a world does not mean competing with machines at what machines do best. It means insisting on human strengths that cannot be easily optimized: ethical judgment, responsibility, and the ability to hold conflicting ideas without collapsing into certainty. The coming years will not ask whether humans are intelligent enough. They will ask whether humans are aware enough. Awareness does not slow change, but it determines whether change serves human flourishing or quietly erodes it. Those who understand how power now works may still feel uneasy, but they will not be surprised. Those who do not may wake up one day to discover that the world they trusted no longer needs their consent. The future is not waiting for permission. It is arriving through small updates, silent decisions, and systems that reshape life without asking for belief or agreement. Normality will not vanish in a dramatic moment. It will fade while people are busy adjusting. The real risk is not fear, but distraction. When attention is scattered, power concentrates elsewhere. Awareness is the last form of freedom that cannot be automated. Those who learn to question, to slow down, and to understand the forces shaping their choices will not control the future, but they will remain human within it. The coming years will reward neither blind optimism nor despair, but clarity. Thank you to everyone who chose to listen carefully rather than scroll past. Thank you to the viewers and the audience who value understanding over comfort. Your attention is not just time spent here. It is an act of resistance in an age that profits from unconsciousness.
How do you get to know your own mind? I practice Vipassana meditation. When I just began practicing, I became like this missionary. Everybody must go. And after some years, I've just, from empirical observation, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Find out what works for you, and then whatever it is. It can be a different tradition of meditation. It can be therapy. It can be art, it can be sport, it can be going to the woods for a period, whatever works for you, and then invest in it. And it is, in many ways, the most important thing you can give yourself.
A lot of people, if they're watching this video, it was recommended to them by an algorithm.
Algorithms now are extremely powerful. They increasingly control us. I'm now publishing a book. I'm on a book tour. My number one client is not a human being, it's the algorithm. If I can get the algorithm to recommend my book, that's it, my job is done. The humans will follow the algorithm. We need these algorithms, otherwise we can't manage these huge information network without algorithmic help. They should be accountable. If a social media algorithm recommends to people a hate-filled conspiracy theory, this is the fault not of the person who produced the conspiracy theory. It's the fault of the people who designed and let loose the algorithm. There is this huge debate about freedom of speech. I think we should be extremely careful about censoring the free speech of human beings. But they should be held accountable for the decisions of their algorithms. And algorithms don't have freedom of speech. It's the first time in history that there is something which is not a human being that decides which stories to spread and that can create new stories. The most important taboo of the global liberal order was that strong countries cannot just invade and conquer other countries by force of arms just because they are stronger. It has been, I would say, the most amazing political and maybe moral achievement of humankind. And the place to see that it was a reality is in government budgets. People talk about peace and war, and they think about, all these pacifist literature or poetry. Don't read poetry, read government budgets. And government budgets over the last 20 or 30 years have been the most amazing thing to read. More than 80% of the budget of the Roman Empire was spent on soldiers, warships, fortresses, weapons. And this was the situation until the 20th century. In the early 20th century, more than 50% is spent on the military. In the early 21st century, all over the world, taking all countries, the average expenditure went down to between 6 and 7%, compared to 10% average spent on healthcare. It was the first time in human history that governments spent more money on healthcare than on the military. And it was all based on this basic taboo that, okay, there are civil wars, there are revolts, revolutions, we didn't solve all problems. But one thing is off the table. You cannot invade and conquer another country just because you're stronger. And this taboo has now been broken.